Hi, this is Patrick. I wanted to touch on this concept of kind of structure and how you might structure an online course. So, I'm going to show you two examples, and there's obviously lots of variation, but essentially there are two different kinds of ways that people will develop courses, or as far as structure their content. Now, typically they're either in topics, modules, units, weeks. You can call it whatever you want. They don't have to be linear, but typically there's some type of chunk of content. And typically, more often than not, it's either a module that maybe doesn't adhere to a 1 week schedule per se, or they're week by week. So there's a week 1, week 2, week 3. I often will use modules if it's a course that I teach in the fall and spring, and then as well as in the summer. Because at my institution, my fall and spring courses are 15 weeks and my summer courses are 7 weeks. So I can essentially just double my modules. So instead of a 2 week module during the fall and spring, it becomes a 1 week module during the summer. And so I can use the same course shell. But this isn't so much about whether you use modules, units, weeks, topics, though I do think numbering it and being clear about how you are structuring it is important, both in the syllabus as well as the course. But what I really want to talk about is how you structure the content within that chunk, so within the module. And so in this case, you can see that this is what I call a very flat structure. I have one module page, and I consistently call it the same thing each time. And then on that page, it describes everything the student has to do for this week. Now, I tend to teach graduate courses only, and so I structure my courses with that in mind. But you can see Module 1 activities, it's separated by readings. There's some similar structure, but it's a very long page. It's a very flat page, but it tells them what they have to do. And then they can go back here, and if there's a discussion or another task within that module, they can clearly see where they have to do that. And so I realized Canvas is structured differently than Moodle, and this is Moodle, but you can see the same basic idea. Here's another workshop I did, so it wasn't a traditional online course. And so I basically tell them, all right, this is where you start. But then within this, because it didn't have a textbook, there's a module overview, but it's real short. And in fact, there's some formatting things that have been tweaked since, but ignore the style, but think of it more that there's just a list of the main tasks they have to do. It tells them the objective. Sometimes you might start with an introductory paragraph to try and kind of serve as a hook to get them interested. And then there are individual modules or submodules, if you want. I number them where it tells them what they have to do, and there's more of the content here. And then then they can jump to the next page. And I think if I jump here in module 2, you can see. And usually I follow design principles that left or right alignment is easier to read. So the style sheet has been changed, but usually that would be left aligned as well as any headings. But if you can see when it goes down, then there's basically that kind of continue on, which is built into Canvas. So I want to bring that up because then what you essentially would do is possibly start with a module structure and build it out based on how you want to do that. And so if I go to modules, I can basically from the beginning, module 1, and I can add the topic later. And so then basically from that, I would basically follow that same system. And if you know the topic's already, great. But this is the way that I kind of approach this. Now, I'm going to go ahead and build this out to be 8 modules. Okay, so I have 8 modules. Now I would later go in and add a good descriptive topic. This could be something like, for module 1, it might be getting started, or it might be introduction or orientation, and then you might have some more meaningful topics. I tend to be topic driven, not chapter driven, because I try not to tie it too closely to a textbook in case the textbook changes. Then with under each module, I basically then follow a similar structure. And so if I jump over to my pages, if I'm going to go with a flat structure, I might go module 1, activities. And right now I'm just building the pages. So down here I'm just going to do save and publish. I'm going to jump down to module. And I'm going to hit plus sign, content page, and I'm going to add that. And down here I could decide, do I want to indent, do I not? And this is where it could be helpful if you're finding that you have multiple layers of content. So then under Module 1, I'm going to add a discussion because each week I'm going to have a discussion. So I'm just going to add the topic, and I'll fix that later. And then maybe I'm going to add an assignment. And so this could be something that you find yourself doing week after week. So I'm going to click New Assignment. And often I will number my assignments. If a numbering system doesn't work, you could just say add topic, and then later you would add this topic. So now you see that I have this basic structure. Module 1, I have my activities, or you could also call it lessons instead of activities, or assignments. So if, the reason I sometimes will call it activities is because some activities aren't actually graded, whereas assignments I usually grade, but you can do it either way. And so once you know your topics, you can basically add that in. But when you have this structure set up, then you can follow that same structure week after week, and that kind of repetition can help learners. Now, this is one way to do it, and you can go through and if you'd like to, you could indent these under each one. I don't, but you could. And there's obviously, you could have multiple discussions. I tend to not have more than 2 discussions in a given week unless I want to give them a choice. So I might have 3 discussions and say choose 1 out of 3. But the other way that I wanted to point out was that I might sit here and go down here and go back to pages. And so this is going to be, while this is the flat view, I'm going to show you another way. So we're going to say Module 2, and I tend to pick one or the other, not combine them, but there's no rules here. So Module 2, I would say Overview. And on the overview, I might actually, as well as the lesson kind of format, I would start with an introductory paragraph. I would then list the objectives if I want to do that, and then I would add an overview of what they're doing that week, perhaps in a checklist format. So now I'm going to add that content page I just created. So I have that. So I have my Module 2 overview, but then I would go and I would create, let's say, some subpages, and it could be on a specific topic. And so this is where sometimes numbering it helps. And so right now I'm just building out the skeleton, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and go back to this, and I'm going to add one more. And I try to be very consistent with my naming and how I do this. And so if I just messed up the formatting, I can go to View All Pages, and I can see how this is set up. And so I try to look at my spacing and everything. So then I would go down to Modules, and I would add these. And you could see, you could do this page by page, or you could create all the pages and then add them. So whatever system works best for you. Okay. And I can move that up. And then from this is where I might actually indent this one and follow this kind of system. And then I basically would go here and I would say, I want to add a discussion now. And it's going to be a new topic. So this might be 2.3 discussion, add topic. And sometimes, depending on how you do it, you might find that you only have 1 or 2 discussions, or a certain number of discussions. Maybe you have one every other week, and so you can, rather than add the topic, it might be discussion 2, discussion 3. So I'm going to increase the indent. So I just wanted to show you 2 different kinds of ways to structure just the layout. So one is this really flat where you're going to have, and you can even see this in web design where it's one page that's really long. That another model is where you basically that front page is really short, and then that might be where you have a specific course banner, and it really shouldn't be something they scroll. It's really short where it basically says this is the overview, this is the objectives, and then they dig down into the subtopics where you have a lot more content, and then you have the discussions, and maybe you have a couple of assignments as well. And so those are two different ways of doing it. The other thing is, though, or the bigger idea behind this is being consistent with it. Does it mean that every week you have to have, 3 subtopics? No. But it is helpful for students to start to see how you do this. So you might actually go over here and let me edit this and say readings. And then you might always have that rather than a topic, because maybe they have a textbook, you might actually have this be the assignments. So you have specific, so every module you might have, module 3.1 might be readings, and module 3.2 might always be assignments, and then module 3.3 is always the discussion. It's that repetition that can be very helpful. You don't want to get stale, or you don't want it to be so predictable where it's just kind of monotonous, but that repetition really helps. Then much the same way, if this is your overview page, you want to really get into the habit of having the same kind of system. So you might have introductory paragraph, right, whatever that might be, and then learning objectives, if you'd like to include those. Sometimes you can even do this in a call-out box, but you get the idea. And then you could call it tasks, and then you could actually number what is it they have to do. So you get the basic idea. And then with this, what I would do is I pay attention to also how I basically use my styles. So these I would start as a paragraph style, and I might actually change this to level 2, and I want this to be at the same level. And so for accessibility reasons, I try to really think about how I'm going to use my headings. And so the idea is this would be my heading 1, this would be my heading 2. And what I was trying to say here is that, another option that some people do is they might create a table and basically as a call-out box. And then from this table, you can make it go the width. You could do other things to change the background color, and so there are different ways that you can use the table properties. And so I could add a border, I could play with the alignment if I wanted to, and the background color I might say I want it to be this. And I happen to know the HTML, so that's what made that easier for me. And if you don't really want your objectives to be, let's say, a heading, let's try to, another way is I can bring that back to paragraph, and I can give myself a space here. Alright, so let's save and view it. And you can see it's doing a little funky things here, and so I would go about fixing this. And what actually probably did it more than anything was the alignment. So this is where, no problem, you can go back, and I can go here, and let's see if that fixed the problem. So it did. So there's definitely some spacing things, but you can see the idea here is the module overview. I have my main heading. I have my introductory paragraph that kind of helps bring the learners in there, get them excited about it. If I want to, I list my objectives. I can just do it in a bulleted format. I can do it in a table. This table is actually a little too overpowering, so I might actually not use it this way. And then I basically tell the task. Then when they go next, they're able to go to the next page, which is the readings, and it describes what they have to read in more detail. And then I try to, whenever possible, whether it's a reading or a video, is to give them context. What is it why are they reading this? So I try to avoid just having a list of bullets alone. If they're watching a video, I might actually have them think about what they're watching it, why are they watching it. And so this is just a short overview of how two different ways that you might structure your activities, your content pages in Canvas. I hope this was helpful. Thanks.